Hello, welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And there's a lot of ideas. There's a lot I want to talk about. Um, all across the board. Um, but I guess we'll just start somewhere and have our conversation. And I'm gonna start off with what is a witch? Um, our language is so limited and everything is so structured. Um, and most information we get is from other people. We either read it from a book. And so there's a lot of, it seems like most conversations are really just trying to agree, create an agreement, and then we call it a fact. So we define it, labels, terminology, and then we try to legitimize things with a story. It might be like you try to put timeline and facts and events together and create a history, maybe like the real lineage or heritage of a witch. Um, and it seems like myth is always blended in. And so we get distortions, reinterpretation, variations. And so there are differences, but I guess there has to be a point where all roads lead to the same destination. All paths lead to that same goal of self-realization. And I feel on the journey, whether you start off as a mystic, uh, with like maybe some religious views or practices, or whether you're a magic user, and however you identify or label it, or maybe you're just kind of sitting in a vague spot. Maybe you feel like you don't need to define it, and that's all good too, but we're just kind of having a conversation. And the reason why is, I'm working retail and we hired a new girl. And I noticed she had some like kind of like gothic tattoos. I noticed she kind of looked the part of a mystical witch with her hair with a strip of green in it and blonde. And then and we were kind of talking or whatever. And then over the next few days, I noticed she was feeling sick and she absorbed a lot of energy from customers, and her body was trying to process it. She's in a new environment, meeting a new type of clientele. So I'm like, so just through some observation, I was like, asked her, I'm like, are you like an empath? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, it just seemed, she's like, how did you know? And I go, well, just through some observation, it looked like you absorbed a lot of energy. You're in a new environment. Doesn't look like you're protecting like, understanding how to manage your energy. And so I believe, I'm like, I'm just, so nothing's set in stone. I just offer my insights and my perspective. It's up to the other person to to see if that sounds true for them. So she's like, yeah, I am an empath, and probably you're right. You know, you can use some critical thinking. You can determine for yourself uh, these conclusions. She could have been, no, I don't think I'm an empath. I just feel whatever. So I feel like I'm pretty open minded. So things don't need a hard, I'm not looking for yes, no, right or wrong, true or false, fact or not, myth. It's just like we're just feeling things out. We're just kind of painting an impression. but we're open for it to change. And then through some more conversations, she really does identify with witchcraft and being a witch. She identifies with that gothic style and fantasy characters of I really like to play fantasy at work. I've always kind of done it. Like so, are we team Edward? Are we team Jacob? Are in a Trek crew, what position would you be? Would you be commander? Would you be counselor? Would you be doctor? And in a weird way, I kind of do a psychological evaluation, mostly for fun. Who would we be? So, so I'm just saying things don't have to be so. There's the element of play, element of creativity, inner child, just that creative energy is always in the mix when you're dealing with me. Um, and I would call it creative genius. So, through creative ways, you can come to some very true conclusions or very real and tangible knowledge that you can benefit from. So we like talked about crystals and stuff, and I told her, I tend to use like smoky quartz of various types for managing my energy in public or working with negative people. And, and I left it at that and I moved on. And one of my other coworkers is supportive of my magical side. And, she was like, it's a full moon, write what you want on a bay leaf and burn it, you know? And I'm like, I don't really do spells. And she's like, really? I'm surprised. Uh, she's like, you of all people I thought would be doing spells. And I'm like, I'm very good at that kind of stuff. I do know how. I'm very well knowledged in that. But I'm more of an explorer of magic. I am the magic. Um, so I usually just don't. So then I was like, next full moon, next auspicious time, of course I consulted the stars, you know, with the what would work. And I did write what I wanted on on a bay leaf and burned it. And within 6 hours, I got a manifestation of that. Um, but I even in my spellcraft, I keep it very open. Like I'm not about really controlling people, taking their free will away, and letting them make decisions, especially like in love situations. So it was kind of a love situation, but I left it open. I just kind of made more of a declaration of my true feelings and then left it open for a response. And that person responded within 12 hours, which was pretty fast because, you know, and but so kind of what I'm saying is a lot of, I would say, true magic. It's an art and a science. And part of it is, I wouldn't exactly say the placebo, but it is the placebo. The psychological factor, like the magic book. Um, I really like to believe there's a part of our human brain. I would say it's in between human and monkey that just looks at a book and it doesn't say wrong, right, yes or no. It just automatically assumes what is written is truth. And so it impresses upon the subconscious mind. an image just makes an impression. A bull, like a giant statue of Buddha, makes, when you are really in front of one, its presence is dominating. It's, maybe 12 feet tall. It's the tallest figure of a person you've seen. It's staring down at you with kind of a ambivalent face, and you don't know if it's happy, sad, or smiling. So you're dwarfed by this giant image, and it leaves an impression on your mind, and it might invoke a sense of wonder and awe that we classify as religious or holy, or powerful. So same with the book. So when you're being enrolled into, like, maybe buying a product like a new dishwasher detergent, there's a story that's played out in the commercial, and it has to make an impression on you. So the idea, so legend, history, myth, it all makes an impression on you. It dials you in, creates your level of believability. So it aligns you into the level of believability, and then your spell, then you do it, you know, and it works. So in a weird way, we've cleared the doubt, we've replaced it with, for lack of a better word, faith. Because now you have a new belief installed. You trusted the history of maybe some researcher studying witchcraft over the years, and it's really convinced you of the level of believability. Is that part of magic? Yeah, that would be like a psychological element. Um, so, but it's not all of it. There's a part of it where you have to actually interact. On some level, even in distance work, you're interacting. You're making choices. You might be moving objects around on your table. You're interacting with forces, the target, the subject, the object. You're gonna have to have, it's an energetic interaction. So with these energetic interactions, that's very much an art. It's very much part of, so you can't really divide things so clear. You can't say this is all science, this is all psychology, these are all natural forces and facts, or there's no, or you say this is all imagination and the placebo effect. No, it's this weird concoction of all things. And so your gateway into magic and making magic work for you is really finding what is the key for you, what opens that door. Is it visualization? Is it actually working with plants? Is it working with an element? Is it doing all the research and reading? Is it mythology of gods and goddesses? So there's a finding what works for you phase in your development, and then you specialize too, what you're naturally good at, or even what you're not good at. You might want to then specialize in because it draws your curiosity. So spellcraft and doing things, working with people, influencing people, wasn't something I was that interested in for my own personal moral beliefs that I've adopted. And also, I was more curious about exploring the universe. So an occultist is kind of different than like a witch or a wizard, because they're really more about exploring how and why things work. Not exactly on the philosophical level, but more on the scientific research exploring level. And so they're only doing a spell to understand, to understand how it works, versus a need to do it. Like, I need to put food on the table, and so now I need to cast a money spell, or I need to fix my love life, so I need to do a love spell. And so this is where my coworker was surprised. I'm like, I'm actually more on the occult end. I do psychic research. Besides developing my own abilities, I just want to explore the universe with my mind. I want to explore all this for personal knowledge and personal gain. And so the manipulation for survival for the 3D experience isn't high on my list. But now that I kind of got that out of the way, I kind of want to share how I work with herbs a little bit, you know, and how I select. And it's a creative process. I am a creative type individual. Um, I'm an artist. I, I'm a visual artist. I love to draw. I'm a creative type. I love to tell stories. I love mythology. I love fiction. Um, so, on the magical path, well, you will attract a familiar spirit. A witch and her familiar is a true thing. A magician, anyone who's working in the magical arts will naturally attract a power animal, a familiar spirit, a guide. And this is a little bit different than the way New Agers go about it. I would definitely call New Age a kind of like a collage, a collection of every kind of bits of religion, bits of magic, bits of Wicca, big bits of philosophy, bits of spirituality, bits of cultural religions from all over and kind of woven together like a tapestry. And that's the New Age. And you kind of get it. We weave the pattern. So there's a lot of liberty for being a New Ager. Um, but then with all that liberty, there's a loss. Because you don't really dive too deep into the Kabbalah. You don't dive too deep into astrology. You don't dive too deeply into a subject, that you could like read a lot on and develop as a craft. Where you could, if you really chose the path of the witch, you could dive deep into that path. Or the path of a Western mystery um, occultist, you could dive really deep into that path too. Um, there's and usually the New Age world pulls heavily on, I would say, well, so anyways, let's kind of move back on. So through your life and through your experience, you need to build a relationship with plants, with nature. And the reality is all magic, all our needs, because it's sold to us as why do we do magic? To get our needs met. And all of our needs happen to be in the 3D plane. So how I select my plant is I usually have a natural affinity or attraction, a curiosity to gravitate towards it. I naturally became so I love a long, slow process. Um, I love the journey. It's not like I'm gonna rush it. Oh, it calls for mugwort, it calls for sage, it calls for rosemary. Grab it and then use it in my spell like a recipe. It's like that is a method. It may work for a particular type of mind, but as you individuate and become an individual, as you know thyself and know how you prefer the learning process, the absorption of information, and just how you do your craft, like there's a method to your madness. And my method is pretty slow. It's like I've been really wanting, so my desire to work with bay leaf didn't come from, well, maybe a little when I was in the Caribbean and there was a whole bunch of like bay rum, homemade tonics and things, and snake water and snake oil. Well, I remember they were selling that on the islands. Okay, that piqued my interest. A little natural history. I was actually there in the Caribbean when I was working as a massage therapist on the cruise ships. So, okay, there's something I physically kind of immersed myself in for a moment, quick. Then, you leave it. And then, okay, Bay is you look up, okay, it's related to fire and fire elements. I'm a fire element. And oh, it's related to the sun. Okay, I've had some contact with my solar angel, who is my guardian, or I wouldn't really call it my guardian angel, but it's my friend. It's like I have acquired and have always kind of, it's been in my sphere my whole life, this fiery seraphim, this fiery angel. So as it's made its presence known and become more active in my life at this time, uh, my interest in bay leaves grew. So then, so I made tea recently with bay leaf. I'm like, okay, maybe it could just be a tonic. So I started drinking it, just out of curiosity. And then it just so happened, I really have been wanting a bay leaf tree to put in my house in the south window. It gets a lot of sunlight, and I've been really wanting one, but I've been too lazy to go get one. You know, I've and so then I started. I ended up working in a produce. I worked in a grocery store for a while. Worked in the produce department, and then I got to be more familiar with actually being in the energy of all these vegetables and all these herbs. So I started playing around with bay leaf and a few other herbs. And then, so I started bringing it into my life slowly. And then most recently, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to write write a little something and burn it. And I did and got a result. And so I wouldn't say I like worship anything or have reverence for, not like a religious sense, but I've always go, whoa, this is a living being. It deserves care like a pet, So it's not some grandiose love. It's not, but I just care for it. I don't just like throw things around. I just don't treat them as inanimate objects. I'm like, it's still a living being. It's still a work we do together. And so I've been drying bay leaves for a few years. I'll buy like a little package at the store. And then, you know, I've just been drying them out and stuck some in jars just for fun. I just wanted it around me. And then I protect one of my doors. I have like a little satchel bag that has some dried bay leaves on it. I just stuck it on the doorknob and called it good. And that was protecting my door, like my room. Like it was protecting a space for me. Um, so then recently I have a picture of, it's kind of, it's semi, it's, it's a, I have a picture on the wall, and I selected it because it could be anyone. It could be, it could shapeshift into a woman, it could shapeshift into a man, it could be, it's just kind of it's a model's face in black and white, but the way it's, the way the picture is, it could be mistaken for so many things. So I see it as just a mere reflection of a different me. But anyways, it's definitely been this fire angel character many times. So yesterday I opened up the frame, cleaned it, did a little touch up with some color around his eyes to make them stand out, gave it a new kind of like colored piece of mat. I just used some scrapbook paper because it was on this, the border was like a kind of like a gunmetal gray in a very pale gold frame. And I was like, you know what? Let's go bolder. I put a black uh, matting around it to kind of make it pop. And then I was like, you know what? Let's take some dry bay leaves and stick them in the behind the picture to give it that solar energy, seal it up, and stick it back on the wall. So I did that. And so, and I probably will get a bay leaf tree. Just like, I just want like a little baby one to play with. But, and so drinking tea for health benefits, doing artwork with that plant, I'm building a familiarity. And then I have the essential oil of bay leaf I've been using for quite a while. I I like to mix it with some sage and bay leaf, and I put it on my feet to help cleanse and ground and kind of like support my energy that some people call protection. Um, so, uh, so my body is familiar, very familiar now, because I've been doing this for a few years with this particular plant. So then when I actually decided to do a spell, it was very responsive. It wasn't unfamiliar territory. The plant is more like a friend. I'm familiar with the smell of it, um, and my use of it. It's like it's a part of my life. It's a part of my experience. So I think people don't tell you that base of knowledge that you have. And this is the same with my crystals. Um, I actually grew up near a lapidary store. It's pretty famous in Utah, actually. And I remember, being out of high school, not knowing what to do with my life. I was kind of friends with the son whose dad owned it, and they were there all the time. And so I would like go over there after school. I'd hang out, and he was really nice to me. And I would go hang out on the back. In the back was like a junkyard, had these giant bins full of crystals and stones. And a Native American lady was there as an assistant sales rep and jeweler. And so it was just kind of like this like junkyard full of crystals and stones and those. And so I grew up around crystals and stones for years. And so working with them, which I love to work with crystals and stones, I have them all over my house, in my room. It's like a part of my environment. It's part of my growing up experience. I never bought crystals and stones for mystical, magical properties. I always bought them for shape and color. I was just so fascinated that, being depressed, not seeing the beauty in the world, and then the beauty of the earth is right in your hand. It's just like the shape. I'm blown away. I'm not like, but it just amazes me. The colors, the, it's like when you really think about it, look at all the color in the earth. And so there's, and then I became friends with this lady, and she also collected crystals, but she was doing it for mystical reasons. Like, oh, rose quartz for self love. Okay, I really wasn't on board with like the metaphysical. There's a part of me that's really skeptical about everything. Um, but I've tried it, and I have a pretty good extent collection of crystals and stones, but I found there's actually a certain type of crystal that actually works with me, and it happens to be Lemurians. I was like, well, that's one crystal I feel affect me. It aligns me. It makes my brain calm down. And so I use that one all the time. And actually, smoky Lemurians are like my favorite. Um, and so, out of all the plants I've worked with, there's usually like three or four I really work with well, you know. And out of all the stones, I probably have like 60 varieties of crystals and stones. And I found like three that are really serving me. And so it's just so much a part of me. It's not like separated as a special thing. It's not like magic. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to leave the house without a crystal. I'm not going to leave the house without a stone wrapped around my neck because it supports my health. Um, and obviously, my go to magical herb right now is the bay leaf. So it's very simple, very practical, and looks like we're running out of time for this video, but I'm going to say it's about enjoying the journey and slowly becoming an individual, like that psychological process from leaving the tribe mind and discovering who you are, how you operate in a creative way, and individuating, and through your individuality and you have a unique relationship, a unique interaction. This method of interaction with you and the earth, you and the universe, you with life, you with the realms slash the web of life as a multi-dimensional being, uh, that is your craft. And so it's your way of handling things. So hopefully, this sheds light on how are you handling your tools, or are they just tools? Uh, you're an artist. You're. I would say you're. It's a craft. It's called witchcraft for a reason. Or spell crafting. You're crafting. It's like a cook. It really is. Like each cook could have the same ingredients, but the kitchen differently. Your oven. Each oven